Stanford University.
Welcome. Welcome to Stanford Medicine's Contemplation by Design Summit. I'm Dr. Tia Rich, founder and director of Contemplation by Design. It's my great honor to welcome our next speaker, Dr. Chris Brems. Dr. Brems will be speaking to us about integrated holistic yoga, mindfully embodied practice to cultivate healing and resilience. Dr. Brems is a clinical professor in the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences at the Stanford School of Medicine, and she is the director of Yoga X, an innovative program dedicated to bringing yoga teachings into healthcare. Dr. Brems integrates yoga, mindfulness, integrative interventions, and self-care in her work as a psychologist, teacher, researcher, mentor, supervisor, consultant, author, administrator, and service provider. She grounds her work in yoga psychology based on ancient and modern texts, as well as in current research, especially in psychology, neuroscience, and interpersonal neurobiology. She honors trauma-sensitive teaching practices and cultural sensitivity, accessibility, and humility. She encourages individual tailoring of the 8 limbs of yoga to the context and needs of each practitioner, offering variations that make yoga accessible to all. Join me in warmly welcoming Dr. Brems.
Thank you very much for the introduction. It is my true joy to be here, and I have some slides, so I will share my screen, and I will do this now, so hopefully that all still works. All right, so welcome to this presentation about integrated holistic yoga. Integrated holistic yoga is a model of yoga that I have sort of lived and embodied for probably a couple of decades now, and it has guided, as Dr. Rich has said during the introduction, my work in so many different ways, as a psychologist, as an administrator, in all kinds of different roles. And so it's my pleasure to share this model with you because it truly is a model that is accessible to all practitioners, regardless of circumstances, backgrounds, settings, whatever. And it is a perfect model really for bringing yoga into healthcare. So I'm assuming some of you are healthcare providers, some of you are yoga teachers, possibly, and hopefully at least some of you are already yoga practitioners. If not, maybe this presentation will inspire you to become a practitioner. If you're a healthcare provider, I'm hoping that perhaps this presentation will inspire you to bring yoga teachings into the clinical practice that you already have. And if you're a yoga teacher already, I'm hoping that you might be inspired to try to bring your yoga teachings into healthcare settings. So today, my focus is on introducing sort of very didactically the model. And then in 2 weeks, there is an interactive workshop where we will put all of this into practice. And so I hope that some of you who are here today can join me in 2 weeks as well. And the workshop will be co-led by my colleague, Dr. Freeman. The two of us are sort of the heart of Yoga X. All right, so I will actually invite you in this moment into a very brief practice. So I invite you to find the most easeful seat that is available to you in this moment. I invite you to ground into your body and to arrive in this moment, fully inhabiting the body that you're bringing with you right here, right now. You might choose to close your eyes Or you could have your eyelids at half mast, finding a soft gaze ahead of you, whatever feels more auspicious for you. You might also want to choose a very deliberate position for your hands. Perhaps they're resting in your lap. Perhaps they're resting on your legs or on the chairs on the arms of a chair. As you let yourself feel the contact that you're making with the earth, perhaps through the places where you're seated, perhaps you're leaning into a chair, perhaps through the places where your arms and your hands are resting. Take your sweet time to really find your body in this moment, realizing that however your body shows up right here, right now, is a reflection of your body across time. All of the experiences you've ever had in your body are present with you in this moment. And so as you attend to your body right here and now, you might also ponder this miracle of physical experience across time that has traveled with you and that is present with you in this moment. This too is a definition of mindfulness, this idea of remembrance. Remembrance of how this body has been with you across time, and that how it shows up with you in this moment is a reflection of that journey. So I invite you to be quite attentive of your body in this moment, honoring whatever is present with an open heart, with an open mind, without judgment or expectation, simply being present with how your body is showing up in this moment. And then trusting that your body will remain in your awareness, in the background. Gently draw your attention to your breathing. And begin to notice how the breath is moving through you right here, right now. The breath reflects your vitality, and it too manifests in this moment because of the many ways in which you have breathed across your lifetime. And so as you're inhaling and exhaling gently and sweetly, yet again become aware of the miracle that the breath has been with you since the moment you were born. And it will stay with you until the moment when you pass on. And so breathe into how the breath is unfolding in this moment with remembrance. Breath across time, of your vitality across time. And as you gently watch your breathing, as you gently watch your inhalations and exhalations, you might attune to the reality that these inhalations and exhalations dance with your body. Breath and body are truly one. We can attend to them separately, and yet we know very deep within our hearts that they are linked. And then holding your body and your breath in your awareness. Gently draw your attention to your mind. Noticing now whatever might be present in terms of thoughts or emotions, little preoccupations, little memories, maybe little judgments. As humans, there's always something happening in our mind. And so again, with an open heart and an open mind, simply attend to what is unfolding on the screen of your mind. Realizing that what is unfolding here also is bringing with it all of your thoughts, your emotions, your judgments, your experiences from across your lifetime. And so rest not just in mindfulness of the present moment, but in the remembrance that how your mind is showing up in this moment brings with it everything you have ever thought or felt. And honor this miracle of the mind being with you as a resource throughout your entire life. Ever changing, never the same from moment to moment, as thoughts come and thoughts go, as emotions arise and fade away. Your mind too is deeply connected to your breath and your body. And so you might note that all three of these parts of you are present with you, even when you only attend to one. And then knowing that your body, your breath, your mind will stay firmly in your awareness, gently draw your attention to the reality that there is this witness, this observer within you that is watching the body, the breath, the mind. And perhaps be amazed by this ability you have, this greater, deeper awareness that can witness your own experience in each and every moment. This wise observer that can integrate all of these remembrances that arise from body, breath, and mind. And that can use this integration to make new decisions, wise choices. And that can connect you to the greater reality of your life, which is your profound interdependence with other people, with your larger community, with all the sentient beings in your world, with your environment, your context. It is this wise part of you, this witnessing part of you, that is keenly aware that a larger perspective serves us well as humans, that we are integrated in larger communities, and that our decision making will be most auspicious the vaster we can let our perspective become. It is this wise observer that allows you to recognize your deep and profound connection to everyone and everything. And when this recognition becomes profound, it may even lead to a glimpse of your true nature, which is joy. The joy of being fully connected. The joy of being part of something greater. staying very connected to these 5 levels of awareness: awareness of your body, your breath, your mind, your wise observer, and your true nature. I invite you now to take a moment, if you would like, to perhaps bow your head to your heart, perhaps even place your hands at your heart, whatever feels would serve you, as I invite you to see if there's an intention that you can set for our time together today. This could be a simple word or phrase of something you would like to cultivate or take away. It could just be a felt sense. It may be nonverbal or transverbal. And so simply open your heart and your mind to anything that might arise. And if nothing shows up, that's fine too. And then take a conscious round of breath in. If there was an intention that arose for you with your inhalation, you might seal that intention into your own heart. And then take a breath out. And if there was an intention, you might choose to send that intention out into the world. And then I invite you to release your hands if they were lifted, to open your eyes if they were closed, and welcome. It is lovely to have you here. But this practice was an integral part of what defines integrated holistic yoga. This was a journey through what we call the layers of self, or the sheaths of awareness or consciousness. And that is very much connected to the practice of wholeness. And so we will come back to this exercise in a more didactic way to explain what it was all about. So integrated holistic yoga is really marked by 5 key points. The first one being that it is a practice for everyone. It is truly a practice of yoga that is very much grounded in making yoga accessible, in creating a community of solidarity, of equity, and engaged action. It is a practice with profound benefits with regard to your health, your mental health, relationships at work, at home. We hear this over and over from people we work with, how the simple practice of yoga has led spouses and bosses and friends and other people in the practitioner's life to say, wow, you've changed, you're showing up differently in the world. And there's a big body of research that documents these very profound benefits of a yoga practice that is integrated and whole. It is also a practice of intentional lifestyle choices, and I'll come back to that in a moment, a practice of wholeness and a practice of integration. So let me show you some pictures of what it means to have a practice for everyone. I thought it might be nicer to let pictures speak here. It is a practice of yoga that uses a lot of different kinds of props that help people come into the practice in a way that is tailored to their own body, their own breath, their own mind state, and their own wisdom that they've already cultivated. And so it is a practice that relies on community, and often it's done in partnership with other people, using or enjoying other people as sort of a reminder that we are truly all interconnected, and that often we can do amazing things together that we might not be able to do alone. And so it is a practice that reminds us of this. It is a practice that is absolutely accessible to anybody, to anyone from any background, in any kind of circumstance, because it isn't just a practice that is physical in nature, even though, of course, this is often our vision in the Western world of yoga. We think of yoga as an exercise, but as I'll show in a few minutes, that is just a tiny portion of what yoga actually is. In fact, it's 1/8 of what yoga is. And yet, since that's often the vision that people have, I like to show pictures that are different from what you tend to see. sort of in places like Yoga Journal, or on videos where, you know, people pretzel themselves into all kinds of strange shapes. But the kind of yoga that we do is joyful and open-hearted and thoughtful and deliberate and grounded in community and grounded in bringing it to you no matter where you are, who you are, and or how you are. And so I thought I would just show some pictures. If you're more interested in what this accessibility means, we have a YouTube channel. It's called Yoga X Team. And we have a lot of videos of actual practices, integrated holistic practices. And so you might check some of those out to see even more visual stimuli about what integrated holistic yoga is. And I already said it's a practice with profound benefits. These benefits really cut across all of those layers of self that we tuned into in our little beginning practice. And I won't belabor them. You have the slide if you want to look back, but all of these things are extremely well documented in the research literature at this point. And so it is a profoundly impactful practice for your body, your breath, your vitality, your mental health, your emotional health, your relationships, and so on. It is the practice of intentional lifestyle choices. And so you may have noticed that we closed our centering with a very deliberate setting of an intention. There is this sort of triple intention that we have when we offer yoga to people. And it is always started with the setting of an intention for whatever it is that we are about to engage in. So not just our practice on the mat, but it could be going into a meeting. It could be going to the dentist. It could be grocery shopping. It could be sitting at the movies. But we try to create an intention for every action or life stage or life event, so that we're always conscious of, okay, we are beginning something. We're moving into an experience. We're moving into an action. We're moving into a relationship, and we're going to be intentional about it. We'll set some kind of takeaway that we hope to achieve for ourselves or for other people, not in the sense of like expecting a result or an outcome, but as a way of imbue our action, our practice, whatever it is we're doing, with a greater meaning. And so we move into our actions with intention. And then we attend to the wholesomeness of the action itself. So we stay connected to our attention, we stay connected to a careful way of being present, of being mindful with remembrance in the same way that we did in our opening centering while we are engaged in the activity. And so part of that from a yoga perspective is that we don't multitask. I like to say we unitask. We pay attention to one thing at a time. And that's the wholesomeness in the middle, is to be fully attentive and present and intentional with what it is that we are engaged in each moment. And then when a practice is over or an action ends, say the meeting is over, or you've done your business at the grocery store, or you're finished with your transaction at the post office, we again attune to the reality, okay, that this action, this practice is over for this moment. What am I taking away from here? And how can I dedicate the merit of whatever it is that happened to me during this event towards something greater? So there's this very sort of intentional way of paying attention to our life, of being present for how our life unfolds moment to moment to moment. And in the end, all of that is based in a greater commitment to doing good, to serving our communities, our families, our world in a very deliberate way. And there are 4 guiding principles. These are in the Buddhist world called the Brahma Viharas. We use the same words in yoga psychology. These are the mature emotions, or the mature abodes of the heart. I will come back to them later, but the entire practice is sort of based in this intentionality that we hope to cultivate within ourselves, this capacity to be equanimous, to be peaceful, and to be prepared to face anything that comes our way, to be compassionate and to seek the end of suffering, not just for ourselves, but for everyone. To stay as loving and as kind, regardless of what life throws our way, and to really be joyful and appreciative for the things that we receive, but also for the things that others receive. So not just having appreciative joy for the good that is happening in our own life, but having altruistic joy for the good that is happening in other people's lives. So that is the practice of intentional lifestyle choices. This is very much grounded in one of the 8 yoga practices that I'll talk about in a little while. But it is sort of a virtuous grounding of our yoga practice in a greater meaning, in a greater purpose, so that we're not on the mat to build strong abs or a healthy back. Yes, all of that is going to happen. But that is not the point of the yoga practice. The point of the yoga practice is actually to develop this intentional life that brings a calming to your mind. It brings a calming to your emotions. And it is an expression of these mature emotions in your relationship with yourself, but also in relationship to other people. All right. And then there is the practice of wholism. And this is part of our label of integrated holistic yoga. I spell it here with a W to really be very clear that what we're talking about here is to look at the people who practice, the people who are in our lives, at ourselves, at everyone else in their entirety. And we bring a lot with us as humans. And this is the opening centering that we did. We actually moved through the 5 layers of self, or states of consciousness, or sheaths of awareness. There are various translations of this word kosha. There is no single translation. There's no good translation. And so we actually teach our students this word kosha, because we use it in our classes. We talk about the koshas, and there are 5 layers. You may have discerned them during the opening centering. But let me finish sort of explaining the meaning of the word. So each layer has this word kosha at the end. So that tells you that's the particular layer of awareness or self-identity or consciousness that we're interested in. And then that layer is defined. And so our first layer that we explored in our opening centering was our body. And that layer in Sanskrit is called Annamaya kosha. Maya, by the way, you'll also see in every one of these, actually means illusion. And what that is trying to express in the context of labeling these sheaths of consciousness is that we are actually none of those things, and we are all of those things. We have these different ways of being aware of how we come into each moment in this shared reality. We need to realize, oh yeah, I have a body. I'm going to bring my body with me. Oh yeah, I have to breathe. Oh, stuff is happening in my mind. But that does not really define who we are. And yet we often as humans think that these different layers become our identities, but they're not. They're constructions of the mind. They're ways of experiencing ourselves in the tangible world. And it's very useful to be able to experience ourselves that way. But the actual reality is that we are all connected to one another, and that we are a much more unified, interdependent whole, rather than sort of independent beings that we often think we are. But if we really think about from the moment you get up, you depend on other people all day long in so many different ways. Anyways, so in the opening centering, we began with Annamaya kosha. And then we moved into pranamaya kosha. Oh, Anna, by the way, means food. This is our food body. I love this because this body is nourished by food. And when we die, this body becomes food and will nourish the earth. And so it really has both of those meanings in Sanskrit. The other layer that we always bring into everything we do is our vitality, our energy, our affect, our experience of the present moment, sort of from a perspective of, is it pleasant? Is it unpleasant? Am I tired or energized? Do I feel vital today or kind of drained? It's our energetic and affective self. You could call this affect consciousness, just as the first layer could be called body consciousness. In addition to body and breath, or body and vitality, however you want to think about it, prana, by the way, means life force or breath. Manomaya kosha, mano means mind. This is our mind. This is where many of us live all the time, and where we tend to really see, in a mistaken sort of way, our self-identity once we're adults. This is where our thoughts live. This is where our emotions live. This is where our role definitions are. This is how we define other people. It's language. And I'll come back to these again in a little bit more detail. So this is kind of a big overview. So in the opening centering, we observed our mind. We observed the thoughts, the emotions that come and go. All of this, by the way, comes and goes in every moment across our entire lifespan. And then in the opening centering, we tuned into that wise observer that could observe your body, your breath, and your mind. And this in Sanskrit is called Vijnanamaya kosha, where this refers to wisdom. This is our wise self. This is the self, the part of us that begins to glimpse the reality that we are not independent beings, but that we are always in relationship. We always rely on other beings. We always rely on this earth, on this beautiful world that we've been given. And we really are sort of a co-construction of our culture, our social context, our psychology, our biology. And all of this is happening in relationship. In fact, all these layers develop in relationship, as I'll come back to in a moment. And then the fifth layer that we explored in the opening centering was the deepest layer that the yogis talk about. This is Anandamaya kosha, and this is the layer that we call the bliss body, or the bliss layer. This is the part of you that can become joyful, that can let go of suffering when you finally realize that I am connected to something greater. I'm connected to a bigger purpose. I'm connected to service to my community. I'm a meaningful member of a community that has existed for a very long time and will exist for a very long time after me. I can make conscious contributions that will have a lingering effect beyond my own lifetime. And so these are the 5 layers of self, the 5 layers of consciousness that the yogis work with in all of their practices. We always work with body, we work with vitality, we work with the mind, we work with emotions, we work with the cultivation of wisdom, the cultivation of service to other people, and ultimately, the cultivation of joy and gratitude and compassion and loving kindness. So this is holism in the ancient yoga tradition. It very much resonates with modern ways of actually looking at how we are in the world as human beings. So I have a lot of information about each one of these layers that I will not go through in great detail right now. You'll have the slides. You can certainly read more about them, but this is a lot of what we will focus on in the interactive workshop also that we have in 2 weeks. Because in any yoga practice that we teach to the whole person. We teach to your body, we teach to your breath, your vitality, we teach to the mind. And so obviously in teaching to the body, we do this through movement. There are different kinds of movement that we can use in yoga. But we also do this through movement that leads to stillness in the body. So a lot of sort of the relaxation that comes from yoga is by working with the body in movement and then allowing the body to rest. And to always realize that we need both of those. Fortunately for yoga, and I think one of the reasons yoga is so powerful, movement is actually linked to the dopamine reward system. When you move, you actually become very motivated to move more. And movement is inherently pleasurable, and because of that, self-perpetuating. And so the movement aspect of yoga, this embodied remembrance, this embodied mindfulness, that we cultivate in our yoga asana practice, the movement practice, is incredibly healing, because many of us, especially in the Western world, have lost our connection to our body. We're so caught up in our mind, we're so identified with our thoughts and our emotions that we forget to pay attention to the body. And so part of what we do in our yoga practice is to reconnect to that layer of consciousness, that sheath of awareness. And we begin to realize that movement was essential to us as we grew up as children. So the koshas are also a developmental model. As children, we start out with just body awareness, and then we add awareness of our energy and our affect, and then we add awareness of the mind, and so on. But I don't want to get too distracted with sort of the really amazing depth and breadth of this kosha model. So in yoga, we work clearly with the body. We help our students reconnect to their body and to find increased flexibility and strength and resilience and joy in their somatic experience. We also help our students connect to their vitality, their breath. We work a lot with observing arousal, observing affect, and observing how all of that reverberates into the body, so that we don't forget about the body when we work with the breath. We always bring everything with us. All 5 layers are always present in everything we do. But very specifically, we work with the breath in yoga. And one of the big reasons we work with the breath in yoga is to really honor this vital part of our awareness, this affective, energetic consciousness that we bring with us everywhere, all the time. We also honor the mind. In fact, there is an ancient text called the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, and it's a collection of aphorisms. There are 196 of them. And the second aphorism is sort of Patanjali's definition of what yoga actually is, and it isn't exercise, it isn't movement. He says, yoga chitta vritti nirodha, and what that means, that Sanskrit for yoga, is the stilling of the fluctuations of the mind. Yoga, in essence, is a practice for calming all of those thoughts, all of those emotions that are running through us 24/7, even in your sleep, right? As you're dreaming. And so the yoga practice, the reason we work with body and breath, is to actually prepare us to begin to observe the mind, our mind states, our thoughts, our emotions, the constructions, the narratives we develop about ourselves, about other people, about our life. So it is really about beginning to realize all of the stories that we create And that often creates suffering for us. And so the true essence of yoga really is about bringing a calmness to the mind so that we can become integrated again and not get so distracted just by our thoughts and emotions. And that we can slowly begin to take a vaster and vaster perspective about what is important in life. And it may not be the things that we tend to think about when we don't really pay attention. In modern science, this is called our default mode network, right? We begin to become more deliberate in how we use our mind to show up in the world. And so there are 3 layers of the mind. I'll just skip right through that. And then once we begin to get some stillness in the mind through meditation, through concentration practices, through mindfulness practices, that wise part that we called upon during the opening centering, that Vijnana Maya Kosha, can come to the foreground. And Vijnana Maya Kosha, the market thing about it is that it allows us to take an ever-growing perspective on what is important and how we want to be in the world. It is truly the layer of altruism. It's the layer that takes a bigger perspective on life. And we begin to practice now, no longer to make ourselves healthier in body or to improve our breathing or to still our mind, but we actually practice now for the greater good. We practice now to bring better things to our community, to bring the open-heartedness of compassion, the kindness of love and altruism, the peace of equanimity, and the shared joy that is so available to all of us, but we don't often see it because we're so caught up in our own experience. And this ultimately leads us to the experience of bliss, the experience of union, this profound recognition that we are all connected to each other, that we're all interdependent, and that we can all care for one another. And that if we begin to care for one another, if the well-being of others becomes as important to us as it does as our own well-being, we take a different stance on life. We begin to realize that we can nurture others. Life doesn't have to meet us. We can meet life. We don't have to be taken care of. We can do the caretaking of other people. And so we call this the existential imperative taking over from the biological imperative. It's not about our own survival anymore. It's about leaving a positive mark on the world so that we help leave the world a better place than we found it. In sort of the big sense of at the moment of our death, but also in sort of the every moment sense. I like to tell the story that my husband has this very deliberate practice of the Brahma Viharas of equanimity, loving kindness whenever we're out and about in the world. And there is somebody who's kind of grumpy, say it's somebody who serves us at the grocery store or a checker at the post office. He'll engage them in conversation. He'll ask them how they are, how their day has been. And usually by the time we leave, they feel really, really joyful. That's the embodied practice, right? That we're hoping to create through our practice of yoga. It's not about finding joy on the mat in our room, but it's about creating our own joy so that then we can take that joy into the world and we can notice when other people are suffering. And in that moment, when we recognize their suffering, nothing is more important than to help them maybe access some self-compassion, to access maybe some recognition of, oh yeah, there were some good things in my day today. It wasn't all bad, right? Or even to just feel that they've been hurt by somebody, that somebody actually cared, to ask them how they were doing. So that's really what these outer layers, these outer koshas are all about. And as I already said, they are developmental. So when we're born, we're kind of all embodied. Our experience of ourselves, our awareness is all in our body. And then through relationship with our caretakers, we're utterly dependent on other people when we're born, we begin to develop the other layers. So we begin to tune into our own vitality. We begin to tune into affect. Oh, when this caretaker picks me up and cuddles me, that feels good. And then language comes on board and our mind begins to develop, our thoughts begin to develop. We begin to understand our role in the world. We begin to understand the role of other people in the world. And so everything that we are, whether it's body or breath or mind or emotion or relationships, it all happens in relationship. We are the product of the biopsychosociocultural context into which we are born. And so our experiences from the moment of birth until the moment of death shape who we are. And this is another reason why the yogis use that word Maya when they talk about the different layers of awareness, because it isn't an independent self that we have. It is always a co-created self with other people. And there are beautiful new modern Western theories. One of them is called polyvagal theory by Stephen Porges, that really give us enormous sort of research backup that this is exactly what happens. We develop sort of our way of seeing ourselves and other people and the world through this this interpersonal matrix that helps us develop. And so what is it that I'm talking about when I talk about a biopsychosociocultural context? I'll actually show it to you this way. We are born with certain biological features, with maybe some psychological features. Well, actually, let me go to the simpler slide. We bring with us certain genetics and physical abilities and challenges and developmental issues over the course of our lifetime. We'll encounter different illnesses and accidents. We have a particular temperament and personality, all of those things. And we're born into this context of social, societal, socioeconomic factors, cultural and familial factors that help shape our values, our ethics, who we think we are, how we define life. And so this biopsychosociocultural soup that we're born into kind of helps shape who we become. And then the older we get, the more active we become in shaping that context. So first it shapes us, and then as we mature, we have the capacity to shape it. And that's the importance of that, that wise, decentered self, because at some point in our development, it becomes our responsibility to contribute to the world in such a way that we create a positive biopsychosociocultural context for other people. We are the recipients when we're children. We need to become the givers as we become mature adults. And so there is a true sort of social activism, social justice aspect to the ancient tradition of yoga. And so that is what we talk about, holistic. The holism of yoga comes from the fact that we are honoring all of the layers of all of us. We're honoring each other's bodies and breaths and minds and emotions and thoughts and wisdom and joy. And we are honoring the background against which these things develop and are co-created. And we are honoring the responsibility each one of us then in the end has to feed back into that context to make it better. So that's holism. And then, so here's just a beautiful quote that I think expresses this in a modern sort of science way. This incredible connection we have to each other, this co-creation, this interdependence. We have this illusion of separateness, but there is nothing separate. We are completely connected to one another. So that's holism. What then is integration? So that was the fifth feature of integrated holistic yoga was integration. And that is to always integrate whenever we teach yoga on the mat and whenever we practice yoga in our life, because remember, it's an intentional lifestyle choice. So that means we don't just practice yoga on the mat in our physical postures, but we also take our yoga off the mat. And the yogis gifted us 8 different practices. And often in the Western world, we think that this is the only yoga practice, the physical postures. That's what you see on the front page of Yoga Journal. Most of the sort of yoga classes that you can take on YouTube or whatever, they're very much focused on, okay, let's do a downward dog. Okay, let's do a forward fold. Okay, let's do a bridge pose or a headstand or something really esoteric. But as you can see, not only is it only one of 8 practices, but it's not even the first one. And all of these practices, by the way, are blended together, and that's the integration. So in the way we teach integrated holistic yoga, we never just teach physical postures. All of the other, they're called limbs, these 8 practices are always blended into how we teach our yoga. And so I'm just going to give you a little journey through these 8 practices from a didactic perspective, just explaining what they are. But at the workshop in 2 weeks, you will actually get to experience them. So this is just the overview slide, so I'll show them to you individually. So the first limb of yoga is actually the yoga of ethics. And so this is loving guidance for us on how to show up in the world. And the reason we need to attend to these sort of ethical aspirations, as the yogis call them, they're not proscriptions or prescriptions or directives, they are aspirations. So all of these, we try to get to them as much as we can. But these are what create that biopsychosociocultural matrix that then allows us to move through our layers of self. And so we can see why we need an ethical foundation in our life, because we are nurturing through our presence in this bigger context, everyone else and our earth. And so if we have a set of values that can be the foundation for our practice, that's very auspicious, not just for us, but for the entire world. And so the 5 values that the yogis endorse are nonviolence. I'll just be really brief about these. Nonviolence and peacefulness, honesty, integrity, and authenticity, being truthful, not stealing, feeling abundant, not taking what is not freely offered, not appropriating, not culturally appropriating, not stealing in a very concrete way, but also not stealing in more indirect ways, such as, for example, not stealing other people's time by being late for appointments all the time, or not stealing other people's joy by begrudging them something beautiful that happened to them. So it's a concept of not stealing that's much, much broader than just being focused on material things. And then there's living in alignment with values and virtues. This is really about using our energy wisely. And not letting ourselves get drained and giving away our power or taking away power from other people. So this is really in modern times sort of referring to, okay, how are we expending our energy? Are we giving it away to watching violent movies? Are we giving it away to random actions? It's a way of really becoming conscious of how we use this precious life energy that we've been given. And then finally, the last one is all about gratitude and letting go of grasping. So this is about not being greedy or possessive. This is about sharing. This is about generosity and about being grateful for what we have. And so this was part of our opening centering too, in the sense of, can we be grateful for this body that we're bringing into each moment, this body that has carried us through our life, even if at times it has been ill or is giving us challenges. That is part of the human experience. There is still gratitude that we're here in this moment. Our body is bringing us to this moment. It's also gratitude for our breath. It's gratitude for our thoughts, even if they're out of control sometimes. And so this is sort of a very basic set of lifestyle choices that we can make to show up in the world in our most nonviolent way, in our most peaceful way. The yogis don't prescribe how this is going to show up for you. They're just saying, strive for this, make these your aspiration. Try to show up in this way in your relationships. Try to shape that interpersonal matrix, that biopsychosociocultural context that is shaping you and that you can shape back. Can you feed these values into that context to make the world a better place? The second limb of yoga, or the second set of practices in yoga, are basically lifestyle choices for purposeful living. And so this is finding meaning in life. Creating sort of a disciplined practice of effort and determination, and dedicating our practice to something greater. And so the intention setting that we did at the beginning, and then the dedication of merit that we often do at the end of a practice, where we're sending the benefits of what we cultivated on the mat to our world. These are all included, and I won't go through all of these, but that's sort of the basic idea, is that we want to have a fiery and engaged practice that is grounded in self-reflection and then in the commitment to a greater good. We need to have purpose and meaning in life, and there are wonderful ways in which we can cultivate that through our yoga practice. The third limb is finally asana, or movement or posture practice. And so this is the kind of thing that in the Western world we have called yoga, but really it's called asana, and it is just one part of yoga. And it's a hugely important part, as I sort of alluded to when I was talking about our body. This is a way of getting us back in touch with our body. It is also a way of meeting our body with kindness, with nonviolence, with truthfulness. It is a way through which we can cultivate strength and flexibility and stillness and relaxation, ease and health in the body. And so it's a very important practice, and this embodiment that we have, this joy we can have in being able to move our body, is a hugely important piece of yoga. There are lots of different things that we attend to in a yoga asana practice, in a movement practice. These are some of the things that we will sort of explore together experientially in 2 weeks if you come to the workshop. But I'll only highlight this. The most important piece of a yoga asana practice in an integrated holistic yoga model is to begin to pay attention to our sense of safety or lack of safety. That's what this neuroception thing is. To pay attention to how our body shows up in space, attention to our sensations in our body, and attention to the things that are happening around us. So the embodied practice of yoga, this asana, this movement or posture practice, is really all about cultivating attention to the experiences, the sensations that arise from our physical being, so that it then can inform how we are in relationship with our body, with our own vitality, and with other people. The fourth limb is pranayama, or healing through freeing the breath. And so this is the practice that addresses our vitality, our prana, maya kosha. So pranayama is a breathing practice. It may be as simple as watching the breath. It may be as profound as teaching us how to actually breathe optimally. It can be very stabilizing and balancing, or we can use breathing practices to ground and calm ourselves during times of upset or challenge. It can also be very vitalizing and energizing during times when we feel tired or maybe a bit lethargic, or just kind of despondent. And so breathing practices really work with our energy and our affect. They work with our vitality. And so they keep us healthy on a more affective level. So the asana practices, the movement practices really attend to our body. The breathing practices attend to our energy. They attend to our affect. They attend to our level of arousal, helping us stay as balanced as possible. The fifth limb of yoga is called guarding the senses, and it is the beginnings of this work with the mind to still the fluctuations of the mind. And so what we're doing in pratyahara is actually a practice of sort of beginning to reduce the sensory distractions that we allow into our lives from the outside, and to slowly draw our attention inward into our own thoughts and emotions, to become more aware of what's happening in our own head without getting distracted by what's happening around us. And so it's a contemplative practice. It's a practice of actually moving inward. And so it is called the first limb of the inner practices of yoga. The second inner practice of yoga is the sixth limb of yoga, or the sixth practice. And this is a concentration. These are concentration practices. This is what we often in the Western world call meditation, where we begin to hone attention in our mind. We pay attention to one thing at a time. Maybe we're paying attention to bodily sensation. Maybe we're paying attention to our breathing. Maybe we're watching the flame of a candle. Maybe we contemplate a Buddha statue or some other icon that has meaning, or maybe we're attending to a mantra. This is when we begin to hone the capacity of our mind to become single-pointed, to become calm, to begin to really pay attention to one thing at a time. This is when we let go of multitasking. This is when we let go of getting distracted by all of the random thoughts. And instead we hone this very strong capacity to be concentrated, to be present, to have a soft and sustained attention to what is actually happening in our life. And so concentration practices are incredibly important in an integrated holistic yoga class. And they're often embedded within the movement practices or embedded within the breathing practices, but they can also be practices on their own. From concentration, we then move into spacious awareness. And in the yoga world, that is what is called meditation. So it gets confusing sometimes because in other traditions, what we call concentration in yoga is already meditation. So the language can get a little bit funny, but this is where we're now moving into, we're moving beyond the capacity to pay attention to a single point of focus, and we become spaciously aware of our life, of our circumstances. We become open-hearted and open-minded. We cultivate that capacity for compassion, for loving kindness, for altruistic joy. We also cultivate insight and wisdom so that we can make discerning choices and that we can live a life with purpose. Now we can do this sitting on the mat in a traditional sort of meditation practice on a meditation cushion, but we can also practice this meditative spacious awareness off the mat in our relationships at any moment, in our life. And so in an integrated holistic yoga class, there will always be some aspect of creating this kind of meta awareness where you watch your own experience and you allow your mind to become spacious and open. And this ultimately leads us to awaken to this consciousness of unity, of union. And this in the yoga world is called samadhi. In Buddhism, samadhi actually encompasses concentration and meditation, and even that guarding of the senses. So again, language can get kind of funny. But the bottom line is that these 3 limbs, so that 3 of the 8 limbs, actually 4 of the 8 limbs, if you count samadhi as a practice, which it really is more of an awakening and not a practice, but half of the practices of yoga are contemplative practices. Now, of course, even asana and pranayama, movement and breath, is already contemplative, but these are absolutely contemplative practices, and they make up the bulk of what yoga in the traditional sense, in the original ancient tradition, is all about. And samadhi really is not a practice. It is an awakening. It is the receipt and experience of joy, of bliss, of union, of recognizing that we all belong to sort of this same reality, and that we are all connected to each other in each and every moment of our lives. So those are the practices. Here's sort of a graphic that shows everything that may be more confusing than it's clarifying without sufficient time to really explain it. But these circles are the different layers of awareness, the koshas. And then for each kosha, there is an associated limb. So I kind of alluded to that earlier. And the first 2 limbs really create the biopsychosociocultural context, which is sort of the backdrop of this graphic overall. So the whole psychology and philosophy that I just outlined is actually one sort of big integrated whole, just to bring both words together into one. And it is a beautiful model of showing how we really use the practice to sort of transcend this false idea that we have that we are independent beings, but that we are and forever will be in community. And as I said, there are modern developmental theories that very much support that we are co-regulated as much as we're self-regulated, that we co-arise as much as we shape our own experience. We are always in contact with other people, and other people are always in contact with us. Even your pets can co-regulate you. So it doesn't just have to be another human being. And so that is really my presentation. That is the definition of integrated holistic yoga. It has many implications. For one thing, you don't necessarily see integrated holistic yoga in your general sort of yoga class in a studio. I don't want to belabor this slide. I just want to put it in your awareness that there isn't just one yoga in our modern world. In the ancient tradition, there is one yoga, and it really lives more down here. In our modern world, we have kind of appropriated the word yoga, culturally appropriated the word yoga for a physical practice. And hopefully by now you realize that is just a sliver of what yoga is. And anyway, so just be mindful of that. As you're seeking studio classes, they may not really give you the truth of what yoga is, which is much more complete, much more attentive to the whole person and not just the body. It doesn't have that sort of Cartesian split of where we either work with the body or the mind. It always treats us in a very non-reductionist sort of way as whole beings in the entirety of their context. And it also really translates beautifully into healthcare settings in that it provides a beautiful way of understanding health and illness and wellness. And that's a whole 30-hour workshop right here. I just wanted to sort of put that into your awareness that there is enormous depth to this model that allows it to be used as a lifestyle, which is what I focused on today, but also as a preventive practice, as well as a healing practice. And in the ancient tradition, yoga was seen as a healing practice, more so than anything, really. I wanted to draw your attention to YogaX resources. A lot of these things are free. We have a nice blog. We have a YouTube channel that's entirely free of charge. There are some 70 classes that you can take there, and we're constantly adding new classes. They are all classes that are offered in the integrated holistic sort of spirit. So they always work with all of the limbs of yoga, and they always work with all of the koshas. We also have weekly live streamed classes and some on-campus classes if you are on campus at Stanford, and those two are free of charge. And so there's a link on our website. We offer regular workshops for healthcare providers and yoga teachers. And of course, the central aspect of what we do is that we offer yoga teacher trainings that specifically teach teachers how to use yoga as a healing modality and how to bring yoga into healthcare settings. And so that's YogaX, and I just wanted you to be aware that there are all kinds of resources out there for you beyond the teacher training that are free and that might give you more of a sense of what integrated holistic yoga looks like than my presentation could do. So I'll stop sharing here and just see if there are any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Brems. That was inspiring and illuminating. And one question about the certification programs, are they offered online as well as in person on the Stanford campus?
Yes, thank you for that question. Right now, because of COVID, we had to move everything online, and we are still almost entirely online. We have a 200-hour teacher training program, which is the beginning program, and we're starting a new cohort in February. In that cohort, we will offer 180 of the 200 hours online, and then there will be 2 10-hour weekends that will be in person. So people will either need to travel in if they're not local, or they can come to campus. In our 300-hour program, most of our modules, it's offered in, that's the advanced training, it's offered in 10 30-hour modules, and 9 of the 10 modules right now are online. 1 is in person, it's actually happening in November. So it's a little bit of a mix, but mostly we're still online, just because that's how we had to work with COVID.
Thank you. Well, maybe it's one of the silver linings of the pandemic that your rich training is available to a broad audience. Thank you very much for bridging the ancient wisdom into modern times and into the healthcare system. And we're eager to be with you for your interactive workshop in 2 weeks. And thank you for providing this framework that really invites us to await what lies ahead. Thank you very much, Dr. Brems.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for this very joyful experience of being with you. Yeah, so thank you very much. Lovely being with you. And I look forward to seeing folks in the workshop in a couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.